Um, can you tell your story? How did you came to spirituality? How did you meet Osho? What's the experience did you have with him at first?
Well, I was drawn to spirituality when it was not so early in my life, but I guess it was present in me all the time. I guess what comes up first for me is that for 4 years I was travelling around the world between 1963 and 1967, and I was staying in many countries, in Australia a long time, and then from Australia I went to Japan, and I met a great lady there who was from Austria, who became later the head of Buddhism in England, and I visited her at the monastery in Kyoto that she was learning from, and somehow it grew from there. And when I got back to England, I got involved with R.D. Laing and anti-psychiatry, and I started a movement called People Not Psychiatry, which became a book which was sold very well in England. And then I began to do seminars.
When it was?
1972, 73. And I had my own, what was called then a growth centre in London. And I did many seminars there, many evenings, many weekends. And there were two centres in London. One was my centre, which was community, and the other one was called Quisitor, which was run by a guy called Paul Lowe. And Paul Lowe travelled to Bombay, and he met Barnett1, and I heard about him, but I was not interested in going. And then his wife, who became Poonam, went too, and she came back, and I was a good friend of hers, so she invited me for dinner and talked about him, and I wasn't very interested. I was totally involved in what I was doing. It was a distraction that I didn't feel I needed to take any notice of.
When it was?
73. And then she showed me a picture, and that hit me. So I said goodnight to her, and I went back to my home in London. And the next morning I gave her a ring and said, I'm going to come sometime. So in 1974 I took a plane to Bombay, and found myself, I met somebody on the plane that I knew, and she took me to where she was living in Pune, and all the people she was living with I knew from my groups in London. They've all done groups with me, or they've done groups with Paul. So then I went in the morning to the ashram, and went to the morning talk, and then I got a call to come to Darshan in the evening, the same evening, and I went. No, when I went to the talk in the morning, which was in Hindi, because he used to alternate, at the end of the talk he was on a small platform, and it was quite a small, but maybe there were 80 people there at that time. It was the early days. And at the end of the talk he came over to me and he said, welcome, he said, I've been waiting for you. I'm glad you've come. And I thought this was a normal welcome, but apparently he never did it before, I never did it again. So somehow from the beginning I think he recognised my potential to become a teacher. And so there I was, and I stayed there a year, and then I went back to London.
So you lived for a year?
I lived for a year there to start with.
And what's happened with you during this year?
Much. Something new. I mean, when I first saw him, what came to me was, this man has something that I want. And it seemed to me that if I stayed there, I would get it. Not so much through a learning, but through presence, through resonance, which is what I do now. And so for a year I had many extraordinary experiences, and after 1 year I went back to London again and continued with my work that I was doing there. My groups were very busy, I was popular, and then...
And tell me also the story about enlightenment. Do you get enlightenment?
Did I get enlightenment? Not then.
Okay.
Not then.
Let's continue.
But during one talk, he was talking on Zen, he suddenly stopped in the middle of his talk and shouted out, "Samendra, the goose is out." It didn't mean a lot to me then, but you know, what happens with this process is that it grows, and sometimes your mind doesn't know what's going on, but he could see that something was going on. So I went there, and so I stayed a year, and then I went back, and then I went again in 1977 for a couple of months, and then I went back home, and then I went the next year in 1978 I went, and I stayed on that till 1980 doing my leader groups and my awareness groups, and then I felt I had enough, I wanted to go, and he said it's okay to go. So in 1980 I went back to London and started Alchemy International, and I was doing groups all around at Sannyasin centres. Well, a lot of people, 100 people, 150 people in my groups there. So I was touring going around the world, to Brazil, to America, to Canada. And then, so the whole thing was very growing, and then I got called to come to California and do a group at the center there, and then I got called to go to Oregon, to the ranch where I had been before, and I had an individual session with one, and I talked to him, and I sat there, and I thought, it's finished. Because, I mean, when I was in Pune, I was asked to do many things I didn't want to do, and I fought, but I said yes, and I said yes, and I said yes. And then in that interview, I thought, I trust myself now more than I trust him. You know, it was clear. But I didn't have the courage to leave them. So I went back to England, continued with my groups around the world, always still at Sannyasin centres. And at one point I stopped wearing a mala because I was using the name, and there was a lot of drama about that, and then it came back again. And then I was asked to come to the ranch in 1981, and I didn't want to go because I was very busy. I said I can't come, and then Sheila said you have to come. So I went in 1981, giving the morning meeting, and I didn't go to it. I went for a walk instead, and then I got called in, and I was told that I had to have my mala back.
Tell it again.
I have to hand my mala back. So I did. And it was a big crisis for me. I had a partner who was 8 months pregnant with our child, and all my groups were in Sannyasin centres. So I had a centre in Brussels at the time, in Belgium, and I had 50, 60 people there, and then the ranch rang them and said, you either stay with Michael, or you give up sannyas, or you have to give up Michael and stay with Sannyasin.
Why?
That's how it was.
Why it's happened?
What happened?
I mean, why you should do that? Why? No, I didn't understand what you're saying, but I understand that you kind of should be separated from the Osho.
That's right.
Why?
Well, they felt that I was doing my own thing, and I wasn't representing...
So it was your decision or his decision?
It was his decision, but I'd already made the decision, but I hadn't fulfilled the decision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was already kind of on my own.
Mm-hmm.
But I was doing groups in sannyasin centers, and
Mm-hmm.
of course I had many friends there and many connections there. But they felt